I welcome you all to this is our first webinar from Tillotoma Foundation, and our topic for the day is the future of South Asia and its implications in the post-COVID-19 crisis era, and how cooperation and conflict will play out in the coming months and subsequent years. Today, in fact, there were two scheduled speakers, myself and Ms. Sweta Basak, but unfortunately, due to poor health, Ms. Basak could not join this webinar. So as of now, I am the only scheduled speaker, but I welcome all of you to join. In fact, we have several distinguished audience here with us, and we will expect them to share their feedback after the presentation. I have in fact a very short presentation, after which we can just go into an interactive phase, which I'm more looking forward to. So as for me, I am Soham. I am the director of Tillotoma Foundation, and we have been doing conferences in the physical space, and this time, due to this unprecedented crisis that has been looming throughout the world, we are moving into the virtual space like other research organizations are doing across the world. And I think as we will all agree that South Asia is one of the most populated and a very important area of the world, and an area where, which the entire world is looking at today as this crisis plays out. We are all aware that the IMF and the World Bank, they have in fact predicted very gloomy growth rates for the regions of South Asia. Particularly as we understand it, South Asia is basically, if you look at it, the countries that are members of the organization called South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC. Now, the SAARC was formed in 1985, as we all know, but the problem is, one of the major problems, and I want to get straight to the problem rather, since our distinguished audience will be aware of the basic details. So I'll get straight to the problem. The problem of SAARC has been that, due to political instability and sometimes bilateral problems between major countries, like say the two major countries in this region is India and Pakistan, and their internal conflicts, bilateral conflicts, have led to the problem in the functioning of the organization of SAARC. And since 1985 to 2000, in this almost 35 years, there has been only 19 summits. That is, the head of the governments, when they meet, such summits, according to the basic idea, according to the charter, this should have been held every year. Such summits are supposed to be held annually, but only 19 have been possible in these 35 years. And the last summit we had was in fact in 2016. And as we all know that in these recent years, in the last 3-4 years or last 5 years, in the academic circles of international relations and foreign policy, we have seen a shift of importance and focus from the SAARC to other organizations like BIMSTEC, Asean, etc. Particularly BIMSTEC, since India is a member of BIMSTEC and closely linked, geographically linked to BIMSTEC. And the focus was shifting from SAARC. This, one of the reasons, of course, being our complicated relationship with Pakistan, conflicts regarding, Kashmir issue, etc. So this COVID-19 crisis, what this made was, it made us have a relook at SAARC. One of the first things that our Prime Minister did on the international sphere, on 15th of March, he held a video conferencing of the leaders of the SAARC countries. And it really got together all the SAARC nations. And since then, SAARC has been acting actively, for mitigation of the tragedies and the miseries of people of SAARC. And the SAARC nations, one common factor among them is all of them are low-income countries with high population density. All of them have almost similar problems. And in fact, if they pull their resources together, they can definitely be very useful, very healthy in this regard. And I feel that that the SAARC countries really need to come together for this. And in fact, if you look on the 15th of March, Prime Minister Modi gave the initiative of forming a SARC emergency fund, a COVID-19 SARC emergency fund. And in this, so far, till the almost 10th of April or something, the net amount that has been raised is around $21.8 million, where India has been the highest contributor, contributing $10 million. Sri Lanka has contributed 5. Pakistan has contributed $3 million. Others have also contributed in the form of 1.5 or $1 million. Bhutan has contributed the least in the form of only $100,000 million. But it's okay as far as the size of the economy. But even there, as it was happening, a country like, there was a conflict, a controversy regarding Pakistan and India when Pakistan, at almost like a late stage, much later, it pledged $3 million to this fund, $3 million US. And it created a controversy saying that this fund should be used or utilized through the, as you all know, that the SARC headquarters, the bureaucracy of the SARC is located in Kathmandu, in Nepal, and that it be monitored through that and not directly to the member states. So basically what SARC wanted to do, rather Pakistan wanted to do, was that, as New Delhi alleges, that Pakistan wants to put roadblocks in the way of, India, going forward with its initiative of the SARC emergency fund for COVID-19. So this sort of controversies and contradictions appear in the workings of SARC. And I think the proper functioning of SARC is very essential in the future of South Asia, because that is one organization which captures and which has all the members of the major stakeholders of the South Asian region. Other regional organizations are there that do not include everyone. For instance, BIMSTEC do not have the members of the west of South Asia. For instance, members like, say, Pakistan, Afghanistan. These countries are not there in BIMSTEC. So SARC remains a very holistic forum for development and on this region. And when it comes to development and cooperation, SARC should remain the key. And regarding the path towards an effective SARC is through bilateral cooperation and at least bilateral peace between India and Pakistan. Also, if you look at the security aspect, one of the major security threats that will emerge, as is maybe predicted from the global trends, is that China will emerge as the sole global superpower if the US is unable to handle the shocks of this massive crisis which has hit the US severely. So if the US is unable to maintain its global influence, we will find that China will have a great upper hand in entire South and Southeast Asia. So India will have to play as a balancer in this region, as we understand that the international political scenario is an anarchical scenario, where there is no night watchman, there is no superior authority, making the game a fair one. So India will have to be very vigilant about this, because there will be no United States to come in and moderate or come in and support with military support, whether it is naval support, whether it is air support. So, in this respect, India will need to increase its defense budget. I think, although we would like to focus on our welfare and, we want to increase our budget for more welfare activities, poverty alleviation, etc. But we will need to, as a security aspect, we will need to allow for these people to we need to allow the security budget to be increased, because otherwise we will face threats from China. And the reason is pretty evident, because we have seen, as in earlier also, that China has been activating its aggressive measures, whether it is in South China Sea, whether it is even to our borders in Doklam, etc. areas. And even ASEAN, our relationship with ASEAN is very special, and ASEAN will look at us now. ASEAN has been looking at us and United States earlier for having a balance of power in the South China Sea region. In the South China Sea region, for instance, the military drills that used to take place, which had often India, US, and Australia, will now have to be between India and Australia, or even India and the other countries, the ASEAN countries like Vietnam, Philippines. China has the history of, disregarding even international Court of Arbitration judgments, like permanent Court of Arbitration judgments regarding the sovereignty of Paracel Islands, etc. So it has territorial conflicts in these regions of South China Sea. So the success for the effective foreign policy and to countering or at least balancing China's initiative will be done through India's robust foreign policy. And we have to see that India's foreign policy efforts are not mitigated by or handicapped by India's almost domestic problems, as happened earlier this year through the CAA NRC issue. That we do not go into internal conflicts, but rather focus more on our image globally. And India's another strength area has been the soft power diplomacy that India has been doing. On the other hand, the soft power diplomacy of China has hit a major roadblock through the COVID-19 issue, because most of the countries across the world today see China as an aggressor, as a problematic state, which perhaps majorly caused the propagation of this virus. So there is an element of suspicion regarding China across the world, and India can capitalize on that, and the world will be looking at India. And if India is successfully able to contain the virus, if we're able to battle it, if we get through it, even if we face some economic repercussions, if we can get through the virus, at least we can minimize our casualties, etc. The world will look forward to India, and the world will look to emulate India, and we will be able to give moral leadership to the countries of Asia and Africa as such. Regarding, I think we also need to facilitate and strengthen regarding the cooperation, specifically the economic cooperation. We need to strengthen the SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Area. The South Asian Free Trade Area has been although it was been functional for a few years, it has not been able to reach its full potential because of suspicion amongst the SAARC countries, mainly between India and Pakistan and also other countries. We need to remove not only tariff barriers, but also non-tariff barriers of trade. And, as India remains to be suspicious about joining, free trade platforms like the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which has China as a major, power, India can, of course, join such forums later as it consolidates its economic position, as it consolidates its free trade game within the SAARC region, and then it can look beyond that. In fact, if the United States is not around as a major global power, it will also cease to be present as a major financial power, and India will have to fill up the vacuum space left by the United States in this region, and India can increase its trade relations with more and more Southeast Asian and South Asian nations, and give them not only military support but also economic support as well. And I think in this respect, our cooperation with China, since China, even now we know that China has sent 5 lakh testing kits. If China do not want to engage in direct conflict, they are open to cooperation, India should accept that offer, and India should go into, as we are doing trade with China, we can continue to do trade with China, and we should, but our objective should be to reduce the sort of the trade imbalance that is there, that is the export and import differences. And also we need to strengthen our, specifically our Navy, because on the security aspect, I think strengthening of the Navy will be very essential, because as India looks forward to the Indo-Pacific region as well as the Indian Ocean region, one of the major ways to maintain strategic control over these areas will be through a more proactive and strong Navy, and as well as our marine patrolling systems. All that needs to be strengthened further. So basically defense infrastructure also needs to be developed further, because we have earlier dependent on other countries for defense infrastructure. We are not sure if these countries, especially European or the United States, will be able to give us that defense support anymore. So indigenous construction of defense equipment, DRDO, etc., needs to be made more strong in this region. I think as we look at the conflict resolution issue, I think since many people are talking about a new world order regarding the South Asia thing, I think we have also last year only enacted, the removal of the Section 370 from Kashmir. I think we should move towards, at least a partial solution of issues like Kashmir problems, or even the South China Sea disputes. I think dispute solving will take us a step further towards regional cooperation and sustainable development. And I think as IMF predicts very low growth rates for the countries of India, China, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, etc. These countries under the leadership of India, and also they should look at really increasing the per capita incomes of their people, and having sustainable development for the people. That should also be one of the concerns, apart from the security areas. Development of the people, since poverty will be a major problem in this circumstance, since there will be loss of employment, etc. As many, unstructured sources of employment may be destroyed, as well as people will lose job who may have their jobs from American companies, as their parent companies are hampered, or they go for a massive scaling down. So these economic factors also need to be taken into account. So I think basically, to sum up, I think the future of South Asia after this COVID-19 crisis will be an interplay between cooperation and conflict, where cooperation will be the major part of the initiatives. But I think it is better to be prepared for the conflicts, and especially for the conflicts that are already there. There are seeds of conflict in whether it is territorial conflicts or conflicts over trade, etc. And I think one major area that China will look to build on is its huge network of the Belt and Road Initiative. And as China looks to build on that, India also needs to up its game on connectivity. Where we have our strategic and what we call infrastructure investment in the various countries around us. For instance, our investments in Afghanistan, or when we make such investments in Sri Lanka, or if we make investments like that in Philippines or other countries, we need to see that when we make investments, we also make the best returns from that, because that is how we will be able to strengthen our footprint in the region. Because China will try to increase their regional sovereignty, their regional sort of dominance, their regional hegemony in the area. So with that, I think I'm quite optimistic that India will play a key role in this near future of South Asia. I thank you all, and now I'm open to taking questions.